Hi everyone, welcome to part 1 of 3. I think that's what I'm going to call these. This is using the Mama Elephant Halloween die set, and within this die set you can create a mummy, a Frankenstein, I can't think. There's a whole bunch of different ones that you can create using this die set. So a whole bunch of characters, I mean. So for this one I'm going to do a card, and I'm going to use some distress ink, and you'll see the products as I go, but just shout if this goes a bit too quickly. And I'm going to start with the label, and this is an old stamp set from mypinkstamper.com, and she brought out her own line of stamps many years ago. She doesn't do this now. I think she's a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator now, but I still love these stamp sets, so I still drag them out. And her Halloween one it's a punny, spooky puns, I think is what it's called, and it's really funny. So I thought this was kind of funny because it says "To whom it may concern," so it's for a mummy. And so at the moment I'm just going to put some Tim Holtz, I don't know what these are called, but they're like tiny little brads that look like rivets, and so I'm going to just pop those in the corners so that it looks like rivets or bolts, not bolts, but like, yeah, rivets that have been popped into the card. I'm trying to think what I don't know what else it would be called, but anyway. So I just used a like a spongy sort of, that red thing is like a thick sponge, like a dense sponge, and that just protects the surface. And I'm going to take some distress ink in Vintage Photo and just go around the edges. I've said it before, Vintage Photo for me is one of those, or any of the browns, distress ink brown tones is a must for Halloween especially, or autumn cards, projects, or even vintagey looking things. So I always use it. I just love it. I think I'm going to bring in some antique linen for the white part, and like the bandages of the mummy. So these are these white bits. These are what will create the bandagey bits. So we'll just get those. I'm just finagling them. Excuse me. And just going around the edges again, it just distresses it. It makes it look so cool. I love it. So just inking, lots of inking, and you'll see in a bit I get kind of like I couldn't line them up. On Mama Elephant's website, they do have almost like a guide, a picture guide of all the different characters, and also how, like, so that you know what pieces you need for what character. And I just, for some reason, the mummy just threw me, and I could not get the bandages to go where they're supposed to go. So you'll see I'll faff about with them for a little bit, but hopefully it will resemble something normal in the end. So I think what I was trying to do is line them up how I could see them on the image sheet, but actually in the end you'll see what I do, and I just trim it so that it fits around the edge of the base piece that I'm sticking these to. This is where I'm like, this just didn't go right. So I sort of took them all off and I started again, and I did this a few times, so apologies. But this is what happens. Sometimes you play around with things, especially if this is the first time, which this was the first time that I was using this die set. So you've got to play around with it for a bit just to get it to line up where you want it, and so that it looks right for you. And because the bandages looked very square, I could not in my head I couldn't get it to look right. So That's why I kind of went backwards and forwards for a bit, and here again taking another one off, but eventually I get there, and I think that's a good thing. I think I get there. Do I get there? No, am I there yet? No, I'm not quite there yet. I will get there, I promise. Right, so this is where I decide to cut around the edges. So you'll see here, I'll trim around the main die, the face, if you like, is slightly rounded at the top. So I just followed that line around, and that, I think that's what initially threw me, because everything was so straight and square for the bandages, and then I don't know, it didn't look right in my head. So doing it this way made it much better for me. So I was happy once it was looking like that again. So now I'm going around the edge with some vintage photo. Oh no, that was antique linen, I beg your pardon. Just because I'd cut trimmed it out, so I put some more ink around the edges of it, so it didn't look so stark white. So here I've got the eyes and the mouth. No, not the mouth, the nose. You don't see the mouth. And I'm just going to put those on. And also on the spider, just to keep his eyeballs in there, I used some washi tape at the back of the spider where his eyes are, and just kept the little eyes in there. And you'll see later on that I just add a bit of white pen to it just to highlight the eyes of the spider. But I thought if I didn't have them in there, it would look a bit odd. So but you could also put some googly eyes on it or something like that. That would be really funny. So I just left them in there. I just thought that worked better for me. So I'm just getting his little nose on, and then I'm going to get his eyes in place. Trying to work out what spacing I want. There you go. Now he's starting to look more like a mummy. So there's the washi tape at the back. You're not going to see this. You won't see any of that, obviously, but it's just I just thought it was quite cute. So yeah, at the moment you can't see his eyes at all really on the camera, but on the thing, or you can just about see them, but not very well. And like I say, I'll add something to that in a minute. So that he looks more like an actual, like he's got eyes. I'm going to use some more vintage photo, of course, around the edges, and I'm just going to, you know, I don't know, it highlights everything, and it makes it look more like a dirty mummy. Can I say that? Am I allowed to say that? I don't know. That sounds funny, but it does. So I have a panel here. I cannot think what size it is. Again, it doesn't really matter. I think it was just an offcut I had, and you'll see that I'll need to trim it. So I'm taking this is Newton's Nook stencil, and I think it's just called Bats or something, and I'm just using it with some Carved Pumpkin Distress Oxide ink. And the reason I'm using oxide ink on this is because oxide ink is a combination of pigment and dye ink, and so it sits on top of the paper, which is what I wanted. I wanted that contrast of orange against the grey, which with a normal dye ink you won't get, or it will sort of want to seep into the paper, so you won't get that actual colour coming through, unless you use maybe a black or a white or something like that. You might get that at that point, but I just wanted that actual orangey looking colour coming through. And again, I'm inking the edges like I do. And you'll see it'll suddenly come together, and you'll go, wow. No, maybe you won't do that, but it'll suddenly come together, and you'll go, it makes such a difference if you ink the edges. So like here, I suddenly thought, oh, I need to do the base of the card as well. So I'm just holding this in place. There must be an easier way, and I've done this previously. There must be an easier way to do this, but you know, I'll hold it with one hand and just work my way around it. it works. Being a Halloween card, it doesn't matter if it gets on the back of the card, but if you had, say, a white base and you were using different colors and it was a completely different thing, like a birthday card or a Christmas card or something like that, and you didn't want that sort of look, or you didn't want the ink on the back of the card, then yeah, there's just hold it really still and you shouldn't have any problems. Being a Halloween card, it doesn't really matter if it goes on the back. You know, I think I've said before, if the more messed up it is at Halloween, the better. So especially for this sort of thing. So I was having some issues with my glue there, so I just switched over. And this panel was a little bit long, so I'm just trimming it off, and then I will re-ink that edge, because now I've cut that edge off. The you lose that edging that you would have had. You won't lose all of it, but you'll lose some of it. So now I'm just trying to decide where I'm putting everything on the card, and do you see how it just, inking those edges just makes such a difference. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to use like a million of these things now, because I do. I have this thing about my cards falling apart, so I make sure that I've got a billion different sticky things on it so it doesn't fall apart. But yes, sometimes it's a bit overkill. So I'm just going to raise them all up on some foam dots, whatever you want to call them, dimensionals. You don't have to do this. You can just leave it completely flat. It will still look great. And that's pretty much the card. I think this is where I add in things like my a white gel pen to the eyes of the spider, which I'll do in a second. And it will just highlight the eyes of the spider. Like I say, you can use googly eyes as well. That would work really well. I think they would look kind of neat, but I think the white eyes kind of makes it look a little creepy, which is what you want at Halloween, right? So I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this inspired you to get your get your inks out and play more with them as well. And don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. That lets YouTube know that you want to see more from me, and it also lets me know that you like what you see. So I will see you in the next one, guys. Bye.